Aloha and welcome to this episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway across the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe. Today, we are previewing the Week 7 game against the Denver Broncos. Green Bay is coming off of its bye and looking for a bounce back. Joe, are you thinking they're coming with a bounce back this week?
Historically, no. Because for the longest time, the Packers always seem to come out flat after the bye week. I'm hoping it changes. Also, historically, they haven't done well in Denver. So, that is going to be... what was it? The last time they played in Denver was the game, one of Rodgers' worst games, wasn't it?
And the one where everyone was like, oh my God, Peyton can still throw.
Yeah. Because I think Rodgers was like sub 150 in passing yards, wasn't he?
I swear to God, he ended up under 100, but he probably did get over 100, but it felt like he was at like 50 yards for the whole game.
Yeah, so that was the last time, as far as I remember, that was the last time they were in Denver. So it definitely has to be better than that, you would think.
You'd like to hope so.
So, but realistically, it's two struggling teams. One kind of struggling team and one majorly struggling team going against each other. I hope that they bounce back, but you just got to take it with, roll with the punches, as they say.
Yeah. Basically, this is a week to find out, okay, we said that there would be hopefully a bounce back before the Raiders game. This week, it's like, okay, are you guys struggling or are you just a bad team kind of thing? So that's sort of what's on the docket of discovery for this week for the Packers. But health should not be an excuse this week. The team is healthy. You got 7 guys who are no longer on the injury report. Most importantly, Jair and Christian Watson. So, everyone was kind of giving their piece on how healthy was Watson against the Raiders. I don't think he was 100%. So hopefully this means that we see the highly explosive playmaker we were expecting coming into the season. And the only guy who didn't participate today was Devondre Campbell, who LaFleur kind of alluded to that he might be doubtful by the end of this week, though they're going to give him every chance to play. So at least we should see pretty much the full roster out there come Sunday. But I guess, obviously need to see Jones be out there, but it would be nice to see that Sans Bakhtiari, that starting offensive unit on the field for the first time since this whole season, actually, now that I think about it.
Definitely. I mean, I'm still hoping they do some kind of revamping of the offensive line, switch something up, do something there. So, I'll be honest, I don't know how Denver's defense has been this year, but they normally have a pretty poor defense.
They are bad.
I knew the offense was doing absolutely nothing, but normally the best group on their team is the defense. So, but I mean, anything can happen, but you would hope that the Packers will come out and just, maybe this will finally be the game that LaFleur does the whole, the all gas, no fucking break and stuff like that. But who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, from initial reports, it doesn't sound like there was any shuffling on the O-line. We haven't seen anything coming out of practice so far this week, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I think their hope is that with everyone, Sans Bakhtiari healthy, that they should have a better O-line, more akin to what they had in weeks 1 through 3 than what they did in the last couple of weeks. But that remains to be seen. And the only other Packers update that we have is that Eric Stokes continues to practice. I wouldn't take too much into consideration that he hasn't been activated yet. The team usually likes to announce that kind of stuff on as late as they can. So that'll probably come out Saturday if they do activate him. But,
talking about how soon, right?
As long as it's before Saturday's deadline, that's literally it. That's the only hurdle they have to clear.
It has to be soon. I was going to say,
if he plays this Sunday, he has to. When they release the final injury report the Saturday before, and then they announce who their practice squad elevations are. Yeah, so that would be when they'd have to announce it. So
Well, no, I
we'll
mean
see.
his 3 weeks is up, right? Because you get 3 weeks after being declared you're going to return off
I
of
think
pup,
I think it's 21 days.
which is
So
3 weeks.
but I think the 21 days puts it to like next week Tuesday or something like
Okay.
that. So yeah. So like you would like him to be active for this game, but they can make that decision like next week Monday or something like that. So they do have like technically 4 more days or some crap like that. So yeah,
Okay.
it's a weird one. Yeah.
Well, no, I know that to come off pup, if you start, you have a 3 week window of
Yeah.
practice before, and I know it's been a bit since they said that he was going to be returned or they
Yeah.
opened the window, and I wasn't sure when exactly it was.
Yeah, it was before the Raiders game, but it just gets thrown off because of how wonky Green Bay's schedule has been with the mini bye going into Monday night, then coming on into the bye week. So yeah, so it's been like 17 days or whatever the hell. So they're gonna have to make a decision soon. But all return sounds like Stokes will be back more likely this week, but there is a slight chance it will be next week. But Green Bay is healthy, and the Broncos are relatively healthy too. Their only DNP is Greg Dulcich, who we'll get into a little bit. But like you kind of brought up, Joe, that defense, it's a bad defense. So like if you read into to DVOA, the Broncos are overall the 30th team. They are the 32nd ranked defense. So yeah, that unit, I have it in my notes. They basically have 2 players who would definitely start on other teams: Patrick Surtain Jr. and Justin Simmons, their safety, and that's kind of it. They've traded off a lot of pieces. Bradley Chubb last year, and they've just kind of they've neither guy has been the guy that they thought they were signing, but they've just traded and or released Randy Gregory and Frank Clark in the last couple of weeks, but it's a unit that doesn't have a strong front. So this is one of those games where, in the eye of the beholder, it's like it matters that Green Bay's front plays well against it. But if Green Bay happens to run for like 200 yards, it's not they fixed it. It's okay, good, they did what they should against a bad front. It's that kind of game in terms of what they're facing in this Denver team.
Well, I'm going to go back for a minute, Mike, because we
Yep.
forgot 2 updates. The big one is that they signed James Robinson to the practice squad, which it is what it is. Obviously, you hope he goes back to his rookie season and before the Achilles injury. He's had a slow process coming back. He is still only 25, so he's got some time to work with. But and I know a lot of people are kind of overthinking it with them signing Robinson. And this is why I kind of wanted to touch on it, because I think a lot of people are overthinking it with the signing of James Robinson, because they're like, oh, well, then that means and then with what LaFleur kind of said about Emmanuel Wilson, that this means he's done. This means he's done. Or, this is going to take away from AJ Dillon. Well, no, guys, you're overthinking things a little bit. They didn't bring Patrick Taylor back,
Yep.
mainly because they would have had to create a roster spot for him, and secondly, because he was out of call-ups. So they had to bring somebody onto the practice squad that, if needed, they could call up. And by signing James Robinson, that gives them their guy to, if need be, call him up for, a game if, let's say, Aaron Jones tweaks his hamstring again, or, AJ gets hurt, or Wilson gets hurt. This allows them to do it without, have to overreact on something and sign some guy and rush him out there. So that's basically what I see the James Robinson. And then of course the side part of it is you hope that he regains his rookie of the year form, and you kind of like I said on another on one of the chats for another show, uh, it's basically a no risk, high reward type situation. There's no risk to it because he's only taken up a practice squad, minimal money to him, but it's high reward where, if he comes in and he goes back to his rookie of the year stat, type play, then we don't have to rely on Jones as the feature back. AJ can go back to doing whatever AJ's doing and whatever. That may mean we lose Wilson or whatever, but hey, you have 2,000-yard rushers in the same backfield. Yes, I would like that.
No, yeah, it's an Achilles injury. It is one of those where more time after means more rehab. And the good thing for Robinson is he was never a plus athlete, so it's not like his production as a rookie was because he was some dynamic athlete and the Achilles injury took that away from him, and so he's not going to be the same player or anything like that. He only ran a 4.64 or something like that. So you hope to see that. The trouble is that Green Bay's O-line hasn't been doing their running backs many favors either. So that also has to be sorted out. But like you said, there's no real risk to this because it's like, okay, if he doesn't play well, you just go and sign the next free agent running back to the practice squad kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of like that scene in 51st Dates where Adam Sandler shows the video to Drew Barrymore and the dad and the brother are like, "What are you doing?" He goes, well, if it doesn't work, we'll just try something different tomorrow kind of thing. And that's honestly how I view this James Robinson signing. Like you said, if he returns to even 80% of what he was in the 2020 season, that's an insane return on investment for Goot at this point. And really, all they're trying to do is, like you said, they're just trying to find viable bodies who are there, whether to spell or, if worst case scenario happens, like you said, replace Jones if he gets injured again. So there's only real benefit to it. I don't foresee him being active this weekend just because it sounds like Jones is pretty healthy and, Robinson's only been here since Tuesday. So there's not a lot of turnaround on that, but who knows? Some people will say it's running back, just run that way. So we'll see, and they can use all the help they can get from the backfield. So yeah,
well, and to give Robinson credit, going back to 2020, I don't think the Jaguars had that great of an offensive line, so he knows how to run through trash. So that kind of gives him an up in it. But the rumor was, or well, I guess it wasn't really a rumor, but the news that I was seeing was they were trying to sign Darrell Henderson before, or they had him in for a workout before he went to the Rams practice squad. So it's not like they were doing their due diligence to get somebody on the practice squad for that break glass, type situation.
Yep.
So, and then of course, we add another Anthony Johnson onto the roster.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of funny. We don't even play the one that we have currently on the roster, so they go ahead and add another one onto the roster.
Yeah. So we'll see. That's why I was kind of smiling. I saw you wrote in some of your stuff for later in the show, so that's what my grin was for. But heading back to the Broncos side, yeah, it's a game, like I said, where it's one of those where they don't have their best players are in the secondary. So it's not like against the Raiders where, yeah, the Raiders aren't a good defense, but their by far best player on defense was on their front. And Green Bay was both hurt on O-line and, just struggling with O-line adjustment. So Crosby is the kind of guy who plays with his hair and ass on fire all the time. So he can single-handedly take apart a game plan by just being so disruptive up front. Denver really doesn't have the horses for that anymore, which, like you said, when they were one of the top 5 to 10 defenses in the league, the hallmark was that they had a great front. They were just rolling through guys like Von Miller, the end of DeMarcus Ware's career. They had some really good defensive tackles, but they've shuffled through all of those guys. Like I said, they had the ghosts of Frank Clark and Randy Gregory, and they cut both of them loose. So This is going to be one of those P's and Q's games for the Packers O line, and it's going to be one of those fundamentals that's going to determine how successful they are on offense. I think if they can get Love time, that's the thing too, is that Surtain can only cover one guy. It'll be interesting to see who they match him up on. I didn't get to watch too much, so I'm not sure how much I believe they're more of a match team, just kind of what they were trying to do against the Raiders with Devontae. But yeah, so keeping Love clean, getting the run game going, that's going to be the keys for Green Bay on offense this week. And on the other side of the ball, the Broncos are actually not as bad on offense as I thought they were. Russ is still more of a joke than he was the future, the trending Hall of Fame track player that he looked to be when he was with Seattle back in the middle of the last decade. But, they have enough weapons that he can still be dangerous. The key for Green Bay is going to be getting pressure on him, but especially for Kenny, Devontae, and even like Carl Brooks and maybe Colby Wooden to get pressure from up the gut, because if you thought Russ couldn't throw over the middle of the field when he was with Seattle, he really sucks at it with Denver. And that's what's funny with them going to a combination of Russ and Sean Payton, because, Payton, his whole thing, especially with Breeze as his quarterback, was this ball control passing offense that, it took its shots, but a lot of it was intermediate middle of the field routes. So that'll be big to have Quay back this week. Like we both kind of said about the Raider game, what's it called? McDuffie and Wilson both gave tremendous effort and did their best to fill in the holes for Quay and Devondre after Quay went out in the first half of the Monday night game. But you can see the impact of not having those two starters' length and reach on the field, because even though McDuffie and Wilson are in like physical position to make a play, Quay and Devondre are both like 2 inches taller and their wingspans are longer. So, even though they're standing in the same spot, the two starters take up more physical space in the middle of the field. So having Quay back, plus he's just the best athlete out of all 4 of the guys at inside linebacker. So having Quay back is huge for this defense. And it'll just help gunk up the game that Wilson is trying to see there in the middle of the field.
Yeah, while you were talking there, I was kind of checking out the Broncos coaching staff. I knew it was Peyton, even though I said the wrong name the other day. But, Vance Joseph, defensive coordinator. But it looks like Peyton really stacked his staff with like ex-football players.
Yep.
He's got Kiri Colbert at wide receiver, who was drafted by the Panthers in 2004. Logan Kilgore, ex-Packer, ex-Cardinal Chris Banjo as an assistant special teams coach. It's Zach Streif. I saw Davis Webb as coaching quarterbacks. So yeah, it's just crazy what he's got going on over there for his coaching staff. I mean, talk about, and the funny one here is he's trying to kindle his old Saints staff. He has Joe Lombardi as his offensive coordinator. So, which right there is a Packer connection, because Joe Lombardi is obviously the grandson of legendary head coach Vince Lombardi. But I think I don't know. I know these guys build their staffs with guys that they can trust and guys that know their system, but a lot of the ones that are on his staff are 1-year guys. This is like their first year of being a coach, and sometimes that doesn't pan out like you hope, because it still takes them a year or 2 to get used to the idea that, hey, I'm not playing, I'm coaching. And it could be one of the main reasons why they're not having much success, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
No, it makes total sense. Yeah, like especially guys like I don't think Streif retired that long ago, maybe like 3 years ago, and Banjo, I think, just hung him up. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Well,
talking about guys who are literally just hanging him up and coming into the office kind of thing.
Zach Streif has 3 years experience, so
Oh,
it's been a few years. But Davis Webb, he has 1 year experience. Banjo has 1 year experience. Then looking at the rest of them, his pass rush specialist Jamar Kane has 1 year experience. The running backs coach has 1 year experience. Kiri Colbert 1 year experience. Logan Kilgore 1 year experience. Fabian Upshaw 1 year experience. So I mean, he's got a ton of young guys on that staff, which, in a way is great because you're helping groom that next line of coaches. But
it's a little odd when you kind of think like Russ is the quarterback and their window isn't very wide or anything like that. So yeah,
right.
it is. Yeah, it is a bit of a head scratcher in that regard. You're right. Yeah.
So, but as for the Broncos, like I said earlier, this is a kind of struggling team going against a really struggling team. So I don't expect it to be a 100% clean game, but
like you said, especially in Mile High.
right. And I'm just hoping that overall the Packers will come out looking better. So you got to hope that by now they're starting to click a little more. I know the injuries have really hurt them, but I think friend of show Jacob Westendorf kind of said it on Pick 6 the other night that I think this is one of the games that makes or breaks Jordan Love. If he comes out, he plays well. I'm not expecting him to come out and throw 7 touchdowns for 550 yards and another 150 on the ground. I don't expect that. But something middling like 250 yards with 2 touchdowns and another 50 on the ground from him, that gives me hope because that shows me he's starting to click a little more and whatever. But if he comes out and has another game like he did against the Raiders, then you got to start wondering, is this our guy?
Right. No, totally agree. Like the biggest one I'm looking for is just to play a clean game again. He's thrown an interception in 3 straight games. The number has gone up in each of those 3 straight games. So you want to see that go down and like back to 1 or 0, preferably. But that's the other side of it too that I'm looking for is obviously I want him to be productive. Have a, like you said, not necessarily blow the doors off because that would be too much of an expectation. But play an efficient and proficient game. Get back to the guy who looked confident going through his progressions. Obviously, having a healthy and stable O-line will tremendously help in that regard. But, like I said, it's not fair, but that's the way you're going to be able to tell what he's got between the ears is. I understand that, he's facing live rounds and, the O-line hasn't necessarily been good the last couple weeks, but you can't revert to being a chuck it and duck it kind of guy. You got to still do the fundamentals and, play the right way kind of thing and stuff. And that's what he's gotten away from against the Lions and the Raiders. And that's the thing that I'm looking forward to most, to seeing whether Love has curtailed that and whether he gets back to being, the guy we saw, like you said, in the preseason in the first 3 weeks, or if he stagnates or worse, continues to devolve more from what we saw the last couple games before the bye. So yeah, that's definitely the big thing to keep an eye on going into this game. But in terms of your projections, Joe, what do you got for us for your yes nos this week?
Well, I'm thinking that we need to start a new game here coming soon, and with the practice squad call-ups, we need to make a guess every week on who's gonna make the practice squad call.
All right, you know what? Let's do that impromptu. Okay, let me read it down. So, what's it called? Ballantyne is out. Everyone else has theirs so far. So of the rest of the practice squad, you have Keyshawn Banks, the edge from San Diego State, DeBose, Jonathan Ford, Innis Gaines, I think he has one left, I think. Newly signed Anthony Johnson, the cornerback, Michael Jordan, O-lineman, Magoo, who doesn't count because he's the emergency quarterback, Bo Melton, Aaron Mosby, the linebacker from Fresno, Odumagu, which I'm not sure if he can be called up since he's the international signing.
He's
Pearson,
still technically on the
I guess so, yeah. So he should be. Yeah, I have to look into that. I didn't look into but he should be since he is on the practice squad. Pearson, James Robinson, Benny Sapp, Chris Slayton, Kadeem Telford, and Christian Young. Any of those sticking out as a guy who will make it this week for you?
I'm thinking one of the linebackers. Even though they've got, Christian Welch and Eric Wilson and that for backup. Let's see. It's a hard one because that's why I kind of interested in doing this, because it'd be interesting to see if we can match up with what they actually do. I'm going to say, because he kind of had a pretty good preseason, I'm going to go with Keyshawn Banks for one of them. Are you marking these down? Because I'm not.
I will write it in the notes.
I'm going to say Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Because I have a feeling that at some point, and it may be coming soon, this Josh Meyer thing is just going to collapse. I think LaFleur is just going to get sick and tired of it. It's been a couple of weeks since they brought Michael Jordan onto the practice squad, so he's getting, reps in. He's getting the playbook in place. That they're just going to say, all right, you're done. Get out.
I'm going to go with, I think they'll use Innis Gaines last one, and honestly, I'll give it to Ford.
I hope so. He was my one real big surprise cut that they had. I really
mostly because of how much they were talking him up. Got it. That was the part that surprised me.
They were talking him up, but he really was showing up in the preseason. Even for a guy who was thought to be maybe just a strict run stopper, he was actually getting into the backfield more often than not. So, he was getting some of those QB pressures. So he was one of my surprise, or one of the cuts that surprised me.
Got it. But yep, that'll be our fun new one to go for. Yes, no's though.
I'm gonna take this one out because you've already answered it. But this one's just kind of a fun one because we keep saying week in and week out. Does one of the Anthony Johnsons play?
I'm gonna go with how Sterling Sharp used to call his games when he was on NFL Network. Hell no. maybe going with the reverse will will it into existence.
I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to keep saying it until they actually do it, and I'm just going to say, yeah, we'll see it. Over-unders, I had a few of them, but I've whittled them down just to 3. I'm not even going to mess with any of the Broncos because I really, other than Russ and a couple of the receivers, I really don't know who's on the Broncos anymore. It's kind of scary that I know more about their coaches than I do about their own friggin' players. But, this one, it kind of reverts back to last year with me and Nick. It seemed like it was always on my over-unders just because of the bullshit around it where we all knew he needed more, but the coach wouldn't give him any more. And then we'd hear in the press conferences, oh, well, he did well. We got to make sure we're getting him more involved in the game. So 9.5 carries for Aaron Jones.
I think yes. I think
over
he's playing. I'm going over. My bad.
Okay.
Yes, I think over because I think they have to. I do think there is some prudence to limiting Jones's touches we kind of saw it. He does tend to get hurt, but he's healthy, he's playing, and they've got to feature him. So yeah, he's got to get, I say over, because basically he has to for this offense to hum.
I know how this works, so I'm just gonna say under because they're gonna pull some like crap and run him like 9
Watch him get
carries.
9. Yeah.
Yeah,
But he'll get like
and
7 catches or some crap like that.
yeah. Or he's still quote unquote on a pitch count. So, he's only getting 9 carries when he's not on a pitch count. He'll get like 5 carries while on a pitch count. So I'm gonna go under. The next one is 1.5 sacks for Rashawn Gary. Now we obviously know that the offensive line isn't really doing well for the Broncos, and it is Russ, so he's going to get out of the pocket some, and we know how Gary's been playing lately.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with under, purely because I think it's gonna be, he might get 1, but I think other guys, they're gonna spray the sacks around if they get a bunch on Russ, just because he does. I think it was Preston who said it's like running around trying to catch a chicken. So I'll say under, purely because I think if they get multiple sacks, it's going to be split amongst multiple players, not one guy getting 2 or 3 kind of game.
Well, this is a good one because I'm going to go over. I think he gets 2. And then the
Fair
last
enough.
one is 1.5 TDs for Jordan Love.
I hope so. Over.
My hope is over 2, but again, it's probably going to end up being one of those things where he gets 1 passing and 1 rushing or something like that. So I'm going to say over. And I didn't differentiate him on my over-under, but I'm going to say over, even though he probably should get 2 just passing, but who knows? Like I said, and I agree with, this is the make or break week for Jordan. If he still seems like he's gun shy and everything, then I don't know if he's our guy going forward.
Yeah, it's I think both of us, especially after they started pretty decently this season and the preseason, mounting that on top of what was a good preseason for Love. Not that we were thinking he would set the world on fire, but we didn't think he would, hit the wall like he did the past couple weeks as hard as he did. So got to see him bounce back, especially coming out of the bye with the extra time off. So yeah, it would be really disappointing to see him come out and look like the same or a worse version of what he was against the Lions and the Raiders. So yeah, really, really stumping for that bounce back game this week. It's just honestly, obviously, as a fan, you want the win, but I need to see the bounce back from Love more than anything else from this team. That's really what I want out of this game. And, being honest, that's what we wanted out of this season more than anything else. Like, yeah, team success is always, great and wanted, but more than anything, you want to know whether the future that LaFleur and Gutekunst have, kind of put all their balls in the basket of, you want to see that come through for, not just for them, but for, as fans of the team, you want to see that the future is as bright as they're selling it to be.
Definitely. And, you also want to make sure, because he's going to need a contract. So you want to make sure that, and we had this discussion last episode, but not saying you got to give him the money if he tears up the Broncos, but it leads you to more likely lean towards that contract if he continues it throughout the season.
Yeah.
But, it just, he's got to do better. I'm hoping they really worked on stuff during the bye week that, he's got out of his head, he's got calmed, and we'll see a better Jordan.
Yeah. I think Paul Bretto was kind of commenting on it in one of his articles. He was saying how, don't forget, even LaFleur is getting used to calling games for a different quarterback. So, as much as Jordan's the one learning on the job, there is an adjustment from LaFleur too. And you hope to see that LaFleur's process being, one of the quote unquote adults in the room, that his process has accelerated through the bye, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on too. But anything else, Joe, that you're looking for going into this game, or just hoping for the team to play well? That's the biggest thing you're looking at.
Well, I'm interested in seeing if the Packers end up with any of the Broncos players in a trade, and they just come back on the plane with them. Because I mean, by all accounts, it sounds like they're going to go on a
The fire sale has
sale.
definitely started at this point. Yeah, it's
And I
just a
don't
matter
think
of
it's going to be a Judy like all these other people are proposing.
no.
It's going to be a defensive guy. It's probably going to be one of the safeties, or it's going to be maybe a middle linebacker because they're worried about Devondre's high ankle sprain.
Yeah, yeah.
Or even an offensive lineman somewhere.
Yeah, I doubt. Like I'm with you. I doubt it would be Judy. I just think that he's in a similar situation to like what Bakhtiari is, where it's like the Broncos are going to be trying to recoup on value that no other team is really going to want to trade for at this point. So, I just don't think Judy goes anywhere at the deadline. And yeah, if Green Bay gets someone from the Broncos, it's going to be someone else. So, totally agree there. But we're going to continue to plug our website. You heard Joe reference one of our last episode where we were kind of talking about what a Love contract extension potentially looks like. Check out that episode and all other episodes on the website, ohanapackers.org. Please continue to follow the show. Give us a follow. Give ourselves a follow on Twitter. I'm at Kawano Mike. Joe is at Iowa_Joe86. The show is at Ohana_Packers on Twitter. Please give us a like and a subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts on whatever app or web server. And please give us some comments. We appreciate those, and we will take the feedback in a positive manner. But just wanted to...
we want feedback, period. I have no problems biting back if you give us a negative comment.
Me neither. I'll just cry to myself at night. But that's going to do it for us on this week's Ohana Packers Edition opponent preview. Wrapping it up, saying mahalo and aloha.